So I already set the vibe for what my trap inspired idea would be. So on this lesson, I'm gonna start expanding on that idea and adding more elements and different, sections of the song to our trap inspired idea and, see if we can make a complete version of it. So let's listen to what we have over here. Now we have the important parts, the basis of it. How can we expand this, and make it, a full structure? So my first, feeling right now from what I'm hearing, I mentioned the kick. I think that's something that I would want to add in a section coming after this one to just keep adding, different moments. Probably having, this part elevated over here, maybe elevate it a little bit more by adding an extra element and maybe giving it a little bit more of a groove. So this is what I'm gonna, start to do right now. I'll just like copy everything that I have over here, select all, Command C, which would be copy, and Command V. Now you see you have like the two sections. So let's keep this one as it is, and let's just pass to this other one over here. And let's start scrolling through some kick samples and, maybe have that extra, attack and maybe a more elevated version of what we already had, and have that extra, groove and movement to it. So let's pass over to the libraries over here, go to the kick section, and let's open up a MIDI track, which we would need, to drag this kick over. So I'm gonna start playing what we have right now and, start looking for some kicks. What I would do right now, since we haven't leveled anything, let's select, all the tracks, and let's just lower it altogether 2 dBs. So maybe it's not distorting as much. Later on, we'll start, more of the mixing and equalizing. But just for now, just for it to sound a lot better, let's just play this how it is and start going through some, kick samples. So I think I like this kick. I'm gonna just drag this one over here. And let's start finding, a cool like groove for it. It can maybe just go exactly where the bass comes in sometimes, but maybe you can add a little bit of, added notes in between so it can have a little bit more of a bounce. So that's what I'm gonna try to do on this one. So let's just play it over here and see how we can, find a good way to add this kick and add a, an extra moment on the song. So I think we have something here. I think maybe now that we have this, we can start playing around with it. If we go into, the key section over here, the piano roll. So let's just consolidate this track. Let's open this up. Command A, select all, Command U, quantize. I saw that we got erased this first one. So let's just like copy this one over here. Command C, Command V. And exactly how I did before with the bass, I'll select everything and just raise the volume of each note so everything is sounding, exactly the same. There's nothing like lower than the first one or than the one coming after. So let's just put everything on top and let's listen to how this sounds, and maybe we can add an extra, kick in between or keep it as it is right now. So I think I don't like this one at the end, so let's select delete. But maybe as we did on the first half having this one over here. Let's just copy it to this side over here and maybe add some in between. So let's listen this second half, how it sounds now. So maybe we can probably play around with adding a little kick in this side over here. See how it sounds. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But you know, let's just play around and see what we can, you know, find out. Let's see how this sounds right here. So not as good. Let's just move this one coming in before, maybe to the next side. So I think that sounds better, but as you see, levels aren't as the same as the other ones. So let's just raise these two. And now we have a kick section. So I think this could maybe be a hook. It could be, you know, it could be a verse. I think we could start playing around. And on trap, you know, ideas, I really like, you know, just keep copying exactly what we have and start making different dynamics. I think from this, you know, we started with just bass, no kick. We go now to having a kick with the bass, and I think it feels a lot more, you know, full. So from here, something that I was listening as we added like different 808 bass samples, I wanted to have something with a higher octave on the bass, and maybe it adds a little, you know, different dynamic on the song. So let's copy everything that we have on top except the kick and, you know, and the bass, and let's start working with that next, you know, bass idea that I had in mind. So let's go over here. I think it's this one, if I'm not mistaken, or it's this one right here. So let's just go over to the keyboard and, you know, start playing around with this 808 bass that we have as a second option, and maybe it gives it a little bit of a, you know, cool dynamic that could work, you know, for a verse or a second half, you know, of a post hook. So let's just like select all this over here, and let's just head over to the keyboard and, you know, start playing around with this new 808. So I think we have something over here. Maybe we can play around with it. So I'm gonna select everything that we recorded. I think this last take was maybe the best one that we had. So I'm gonna just consolidate this track, Command J, and go over here and Command U to like make everything quantized. And let's start seeing how this sounds as it is right now. Mainly, I think first we're gonna like raise all the volumes of everything so everything is even. So let's play this and see how this sounds. So let me try something here that I'm listening. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Let's just raise this to the higher octave using, you know, shift and just like raise it up. Okay, so maybe this wasn't in the right note, so let's just put this over here and bring this one down and see how this sounds. Not sure if I love it, so maybe let's keep it exactly how it is. So I think I like this, but since it's changing from what we had before, it's a little bit more brighter. I think I want to play around with this, hi-hat sample that we have. So something that I like to do when I'm working, I like working with the wave, audio file. And so what I tend to do is just make an audio track, put the record button on it, and you see that the hi-hat that we have is on channel 2. So we'll go over here and the input for this track and go to number 2, which would be the hi-hat. So this will record just what's playing on track 2, not anything else that we have on the song. So let's just record this and have it as an audio track. So you see right here on the waveform, if you open this up a little bit more, you see exactly what we have is the MIDI track, but now you see it as a waveform. Now you see the sample, like how it's played. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna like mute this track over here, just like selecting it and pressing 0. Now that track is muted. Now we're not listening to what we had before. Just this one over here. I'm gonna just like solo it. So what I want to do with this, just to add like a different, dynamic within the structure of the song, I'm just gonna pitch this down. And pitching it down is just like if you have this like sample and go into the keys, and just to maybe like show you, I'll like probably go to the sample that we had before on the MIDI so you can understand a little bit of what pitching down or pitching up is. So this is the original sample, how it sounds. If I start like scrolling down on the keyboard or on the keys, it would like start like, so it would like start like expanding, like going down in pace. Or if you start going up, like you would start like, this is the original, you start going up. So that's pitching up and pitching down. So what I want to do on this one right now is just start pitching this audio file that we already recorded down. So I will open up this, and you see over here, this little knob, this would be the pitch. So let's just play it alone, and so you can start listening maybe to what I'm like saying. So I think pitching down would be the way that I would go on this track. You can do it however you want. But this gives it a little bit of a different feel from what you've been listening to before this section comes into the song. So let's play this together with everything else that we have now on this, section. So now I like how it sounds. I think I now want to change, instead of using this clap and this snare that we have, let's just mute them both. And let's just open a new MIDI track. And let's go back to the snares library and maybe play with a different snare. And now you have a different, groove and vibe within the song. So let's just play this without it and see what can we get on this side. So I think I like this one, so let's drag this sample over here. And let's record. So now let's consolidate. Let's go over here. Quantize. This one doesn't go here. So from what I'm hearing, since we pitched down already the hi-hat, maybe we can play around with pitching down this snare. So let's start playing it where it is right now and start going down on the keyboard, and maybe we find a sound that sounds a lot better, which with what we have. So I think maybe we have all these elements new on this section. Maybe we can try playing around with the main melody that we have. So what I would do, exactly how I did with the hi-hat, let's just open a new audio track, record, and go to channel 1, which would be the Jupiter, and let's record it as an audio track. And sometimes that for me works because you can start playing around with the audio, maybe, you know, pitching up, like cutting, maybe taking some release off of the song, the sound, and you know, it can maybe, you know, help on creating some new stuff. You can chop it up and move it however you want, so it's a lot more manageable. So let's just record this and start playing around with the sound. Okay, so we recorded this over here. Let's just mute this channel that we have original, and let's start by pitching this up. Maybe it sounds cool, maybe it doesn't, so let's just see. So from this, I think now I want to play around with adding one more percussion element, which would be an open hi-hat. So before, when we started, we played around with closed hi-hats, which would sound, you know, a little bit like this. So it's not a, you know, a long sample, it's really short. But if you open up like these, you know, open hi-hats, it will sound more, a little bit more extended. So I think I want to play around with this and maybe see which one works to add a little bit of a groove or a different movement to this section of the song. So let's just play it and go through these samples over here. So I think I like this. Instead of using a MIDI track, I'm just throw the audio file in there so I can maybe manage it a little bit more. So let's just do an audio track, drag this right into the session, and let's just start playing around with it. So right now you see everything is cutting off a little bit before because that's how long the sample is. So what I would do is just start pitching this down. And you see how it starts, you know, extending a little bit more towards the right. So it's not cut off before the snare comes in. So let's see how this sounds, and maybe we can start, you know, figuring out a way of adding this element into the section. So I think I like it, but I want to do it every time the snare comes in. So let's just like select this section over here and let's duplicate it. Command D would be, you know, the faster key to do it. So let's play it and see how this sounds right now. So I like it. We can maybe try one more open hi-hat and see if it adds a little bit something. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So let's just play this and go through it again and see, you know, if we add something more. So I think I like this groove that we have over here. So I'm gonna just drag this over to the session on this part, and exactly how we did with the first open hi-hat. Let's just duplicate it all the time. So I think I like it. Let's try how it sounds adding this kick that we already had on the section before. See maybe if it works, or if it's better, you know, keep it simple how we had it. So let's just duplicate this track over here and see how that sounds. So I think I like the section that we have over here. I think we can keep adding one or two more, and from here on we can start like figuring out, okay, what are the sections on, you know, this song. So let's just copy this one so it can go twice, like two times around. And I would do the same with the other sections that we have, just so we have a little bit more of a, you know, a progress within the sections. I think just one is too short, so we go around like twice on, you know, each one of them. So let's just select all of this, duplicate it, and do the same with this section over here. So everything is going twice around, like each section. First one with bass, no kick. Second one with bass and kick. And then the third one, which has another different 808, another different bass with the kick. And just to know, we won't start the song with everything full as it is. So let's select everything, Command A, and just drag it maybe 2 patterns to the right. And now within this, now that we have this section over here, I would try and add one more melodic element and see if it adds a little bit more of a different dynamic to the song. And maybe with this, we can start figuring out, okay, what would be the intro and what would be, you know, a hook or a breakdown, and figuring out, you know, those different sections on the song. So let's open up a new MIDI track, new plugin, and see if we can find like something that could work within this over here. So I would probably open, you know, let's see. I think I'm gonna keep it in Arturia and probably go with, let's go with the Matrix 12. Maybe this would have like some cool sounds. It's another like vintage like type plugin synthesizer. So let's start scrolling through sounds, and after we find, you know, one that could probably work, we'll hop over to the keyboard and, you know, start working on creating a new melody to go with our main melody that we already have as a progression. So just play this over here and start going to sounds. So I like this sound, so let's start recording, hop over to the keyboard. think I like this pattern that we have over here. I think it's the second one, not the first one. That was maybe the first try, but the second one I think came out a little bit more polished. So let's just select this over here, Command C. Let's paste it on this one. Let's open this up and maybe let's see how it sounds without it being quantized. Maybe it sounds cool. If not, we'll just select everything and quantize it up. So let's see how this sounds. So I like it. I think on the second half we can add a little bit of an element towards the end. So let's say this is the last note over here. Let's add like 2 more and see if we can have like a little bit of a closing to this section. Maybe these 2. Let's see how that sounds playing it from halfway through. So I like it. I think on the first half, I would take away this last note to keep it a little bit more simple and just have this section over here. So let's select everything and consolidate it. Let's do Command J. And now it's a complete, section. So from here, let's see how it sounds from this new section that we have going into the original section that we have with the other 808 and no kick, and see how that sounds as a transition. So I think it sounds pretty cool. I think we can now add the second half that we have of the original one, adding the kick from this side, but maybe, copy this, paste it, and now having this extra melody that we had on this, last new section that we added. So now with these elements, I think we can start like playing around with, what would be a structure. So for me, I want to start as simple as possible when I'm creating a track. Maybe, when we have this, the song could probably change up. It could be a lot more, full, a lot more complicated. Maybe it's something totally different from what you have over here right now. But as a starting point, I want to start as simple as possible. So we already have the chord progression, but what if we started with the one that we pitched up a little bit and maybe see how that sounds coming in from the intro, just the sound alone, and passing into this section over here. And, let's see how that sounds and go from there. So I like it, but I think as an intro going into maybe a first verse or something, I don't think it's the way to go. Maybe we can just like select everything over here, everything that we have coming after the intro, and let's just drag this to sections to the right. Let's copy this intro melody so it can start like growing and developing a little bit more, and let's add the hi-hats with the clap onto this part. And so we start introducing, some of the elements on the song, but not everything at once. And maybe you can get that sense of like growing onto exploding, on the hook part. So let's see how this transition sounds now from the intro verse, or intro, pre-type before going into the hook, and then passing from the hook, into this new section that we did that could be either a first verse or a second one, depending on what the artist is, vibing with, and passing from that back onto the second, hook. So let's play this from the start and see how it's, developing. Maybe we keep it as it is, or maybe we start, expanding a little bit more. So I like it. I think we need to add a little break before that intro turns into the hook, so it can have a little bit of a breather. So what I think should happen, you see how the clap ends over here, and we have the hi-hat, it keeps on going. So it stays, constant. Let's just like drag this to the left and just end it exactly where the clap is ending. And so you have this little breather type of a break before everything comes back in like full. So let's see how that sounds. So I think that sounds a lot better than what we had before. But just to like play around and see, maybe since this is going to be the hook, maybe it can have like one more element. Let's play around with this second melody option that we had. Let's paste it over here and see how that sounds now. So I think that's a lot better. I think it feels more of a hook when it comes in. What I think this sound probably needs a little bit of, personality. I think it needs to be a lot more spacious, not as present. So what I'm gonna do is add some reverb to it. As you saw before, like I really like this reverb from Valhalla, called Vintage Verb. And I think it adds a little bit more of depth and, and ambience to the sound, so it sounds a lot more spacious and not so present as, the original progression that we have. So let's start playing around with this. Maybe it sounds good just as it is, or maybe we need to like tweak the with the reverb a little bit. So I think it's cool, but we need to take the mix, which would be the amount of reverb that we have, going into the sound. If we take it all the way off, like you start listening to solo it. So I'm gonna start like now adding on this knob so you can tell the difference on what's happening with, this sound and the reverb. So you see it starts heading like a little bit more towards the back rather than to be more in your face. But I think it's going all the way back if we keep this mixing 100%. So let's just put it maybe on like 60 and see how that sounds. So I think that works. What I'm hearing, it has a little bit much of the low frequency. So let's take a little bit of that off with the low cut over here and maybe put this 420. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, 580 I think sounds a lot better. Let's play it all together and see if, you know, we're at a good point with this reverb right now. So I think I like how it sounds. I want to listen to this section over here a little bit more again. I'm going to turn off this melody that we have pitched up of the original chord progression and see how that sounds. And maybe we can play around with this sound exactly on this section specifically. So just to try, I think I like how it sounds. Let's play around with an option of like changing this, you know, the different dynamics on how you can pitch up, pitch down, like take some of the, you know, tail of the sound off or on. And I like to do that going into like the option of beats. Complex would be the standard one, just to stretch and do whatever you want with the waveform. Complex Pro too. But beats, I think if we put this transient, you know, just going to the right, and you see this 100, you know, section over here. Let's solo this sound and see how it starts like sounding if we take a little bit of that, you know, tail off, and maybe we have a different sound that sounds like pretty cool. So you see the difference. This one has it. This one doesn't has it. So you see everything just sounds like completely how it was. But this one starts to cut off that tail that it has of that reverb. So let's see how that sounds. Maybe it can sound cool with everything together. Maybe it doesn't work at all, but we tried it. So let's just play it around and see how it works. So it sounded cool alone, but when you see like everything together, it didn't work as well. So what I would do is just copy the second section that we had, put it on top. But at least if you want to try that trick, you know, a little bit later on a different idea, something cool to do, you can play around with it, with melodies, with percussion, you know, and get different sounds within the same sound that you had originally. So I think we have, you know, an intro section right now. Intro going into like a first verse or a pre-hook, and jumping into what would be the hook of the song, which would be this section over here after we have the little break that we did. And we go twice around, which one section is with the just the bass, and one section is with bass and kick. Going from that to what would be, I feel, the first verse, which I think now that I'm listening to it, it goes straight to this section over here. I feel it can maybe come in the second go around. So if we select everything, let's just nudge this to the right. And so it has a little bit of, you know, it continues to bring back certain things that you already heard. Let's just bring this section over here that doesn't have bass or kick. And it's kind of like a breakdown from the fullness that we have already on the hook. So let's copy this exactly how it is. Copy, paste. And now from the hook, we go into this stripped down simpler version of doing maybe a first or second verse. So I think that's a good way to go from that first verse onto what would be the hook, back up again. I think we need to do something in this transition. Maybe we can just cut some, elements off it, before. This kick could probably leave exactly when the snare comes in. Same thing could probably happen with the hi-hat. It keeps on going, so we can do a similar thing as we did before and just cut this off over here. Let's see how that sounds before the hook comes in. So it sounds cool. What we're doing over here, that's still, playing, and it's adding that, thing that I'm not liking is the bass. It keeps on going. So let's just take it off. And now we have this section, completely empty, just with the snare and just, with the melody. So let's see how that sounds now. So I think that works. I think now we have, some solid, sections for any songwriter or any artist to come in and have different dynamics of going from an intro part, going into this first verse or intro, pre-hook type, going to a full, hook. Second version, second go around, a little bit more stripped down, not with the two melodies, but just one, and the kick. And going back to something that we already heard and brings you to that, stripped down version of what could be a second verse, or it could be the first verse, whatever the artist is, feeling like, and having this new element that would give it a different, moment or dynamic on the song. That could be a second half of that verse, leading up to the, explosion of having back all the elements on the hook. So I think we have, those elements, those different sections, high and low, stripped down, fuller. And I think that works very well for you to be able to create different moments in the song. I think the only thing that we're missing from this point on right now is an outro. So what I would do is just add this little element. That's the first thing that you listen to when you listen to the song, which is this. Let's copy this, put it in the outro. But you see how in the beginning we just have it alone? Let's add that second melody with it at the end. And now it's maybe of a closure of having, the both melodic elements that we have on the song. And let's see, how that sounds as an outro. So I think it sounds cool, but maybe we can play around so we can make more of a moment. This section we can keep it the same as it is, but maybe this one we can nudge it down an octave on the keyboard, and maybe it sounds a little bit cooler. So let's play around with this and see how that sounds. So I like it. What I feel, it still has a little bit of brightness on it. So let's add a filter and play a little bit with the automation on it. So let's go over here to the effects, audio effects, EQ and filter. Let's go to auto filter, throw it over here, put everything at, as flat as possible. And let's just play with this knob over here, the frequency. So to open up, the automations, we go to this, arrow over here. And now you see all the lines. You see if I play around with this knob, you see how everything starts to just go up and down. So this is the one that we're going to play with. So let's just make a point over here. And let's start like scrolling this down. So it starts to just like disappear a little bit. Like it starts to get a little bit like take all that brightness, off of the sound. So let's see how this sounds right now. Just taking this all the way to this part, like 100, like 140 hertz. So let's play around with this. So that's more of what I was listening to in my head. So that's something cool that I always play around. I like playing around with filters. It adds, a different moment, different dynamics within sections of the song. That's something that you can play around with, even more within the track. But I think at least for the outro, it just worked very well. It added something different that we hadn't heard before in the track. So that's that special moment that you listen to have a little bit, of a closure on the track. Yeah, guys, so I'm really happy with what we have right now, what we've been creating, all the sections that we have. So let's just go from the top and listen to everything, and let's see what we have over here. Yeah, guys, so I think I'm super happy with how this is sounding. And so on the next lesson, I would just like come in and do some, finishing touches, like work more on the mix side of it, like level some of the things. Maybe, I think percussion could be a little bit higher. Maybe the melody can be a little bit more in the back. Maybe add some space or reverb to certain things, compression, and just, tweak it up so it can get as close to a finished product as possible. So see you guys on the next lesson.